Another week of ASUN basketball is in the books, which means it's time for another episode of the ASUN Gameday podcast. This week, we have something a little different in mind. Got a guest joining me to dive into men's and women's basketball all around the Atlantic Sun Conference. Let's get straight to it. We are back on the ASUN Gameday podcast. William Hall, and I'm here with a special guest of the podcast, Mia O'Brien. Mia, how are you?
Doing great, William. It's great to finally explore the ASUN offices that I had no idea are down the street from my offices at 1010XL here in Jacksonville, and excited to meet everybody here and connect with some old friends too.
So before we get diving headfirst in the men's and women's basketball, just take a minute to explain to our audience who may not know who you are. Just give a little rundown about on your resume.
Absolutely. So I am the director of multimedia production at 1010XL, which is the flagship station of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Florida Gators. I host the midday show, Monday through Friday, 12 to 2 p.m., Helmets and Heels, which is the first all-female daily sports radio program with multiple females in the country, and especially in an NFL market. I cover the Jacksonville Jaguars on a beat reporting basis, but as we were just talking about off camera, a secret passion of mine, has not so secret anymore, has always been college basketball. I first got hooked. My first job out of college was in Iowa. I was in Iowa in 2015 when on the men's side, Iowa, Iowa State, and Northern Iowa all went to the NCAA tournament for a second straight year, just the second time in history that 3 of the 4 Division I programs in the state had gone to the NCAA tournament. I was there when Northern Iowa in the first round defeated Texas and Oklahoma City on a half-court buzzer beater by Paul Jesperson. Easily one of the coolest sports moments I've ever been a part of, and I was hooked from that moment forth. I also was blessed enough to work closely with Lisa Bluter and the Iowa women's basketball team during my 3 years there, have stayed in touch with them more than just following Caitlin Clark, more than just CC. Obviously I got to cover Megan Gustafson 3 of her 4 seasons, and really have appreciated what Lisa and what that team has meant for women's basketball. I like to say I was there earlier than the rest of y'all, but I'm glad everybody made it. But in turn, women's basketball has been exploding, and I think that's definitely the most. It's a storyline everyone's talking about, but for me, it's reinvigorated my passion for it that I felt when I was there for 3 years. And it's great to see here locally in Jacksonville how into women's basketball at the collegiate and the professional level people have become over the last 2 years. And so I was asked back in October if I'd be interested, in addition to all those other the other jobs that I have, which I forgot to mention. I also am a sideline reporter and play-by-play for the University of North Florida and JU on ESPN+. In addition to all that, I was asked if I'd be interested in doing a weekly women's basketball podcast with OG Triangle Media up in North Carolina. And so we launched the first week of the women's college basketball season. It's myself and Mitchell Northam, one of the preeminent women's basketball writers up in North Carolina in the Triangle area. He actually has an exciting book coming out next year. He was embedded with the North Carolina women's basketball program all of last year, the 2023 to 2024 season. And so we've been having a blast. We're 7 episodes in. And yeah, it's been great for me because I've learned even more about women's basketball in addition to following both the men and the women in the collegiate side and being an AP voter on the men's side as well.
That's the plus.
Yes, exactly.
So we'll get to the men. We'll say the men. Let's start with women's basketball.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest storyline, I think, nationally, regionally, is Carl Semesco leaving FGCU.
Massive.
Taking the job with the Dream. What unique position do you think that puts FGCU in? Not that the identity's changed. Chelsea Lyles has been there. That team is the same team that he recruited and that he started the season with. But now they're in a position where you got to figure it out. But they've won 7 in a row, so I think they got it figured out.
I think they've won 7 in a row because I think they have finally settled into this new normal. And look, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that Carl, this process of going to the Atlanta Dream, unfortunately, the courting started well before the season. It was unfortunate, and we saw this with Lynn Roberts with Utah and the Los Angeles Sparks as well, that by nature of the hiring cycle, it had to happen while the college basketball season had already begun. But make no mistake about it, the program that Carl built is going to be here long after he has transitioned to the WNBA, and Chelsea, having played and been a part of that system for so long, it's not broken. It doesn't need fixing. I think it was just a matter of, hey, not having him in the gym, and hey, having assistants having to slide a couple spots over on the bench. It was always going to take a couple of weeks to get their footing. I think what's been really surprising, William, is the three-point shooting really wasn't there at the clip that perhaps we are accustomed to with FGCU in the early part of the season. And look, that could simply be rust. That can be players coming in through the transfer portal, still gelling together, in addition to now gelling with a reworked coaching staff. But that's been the most interesting storyline for me. I think it's also a fascinating macro discussion regarding college coaches leaving for the WNBA. We know with a new salary cap on the horizon in the WNBA, the fact that coaches can now be paid salaries. And Lynn Roberts was just on the Locked On Women's Basketball podcast, and she was very transparent. The WNBA can now be your full-time job as a head coach. Previously, it could not be a full-time job. Will that create a domino effect where some of the best coaches in college say, I don't want to recruit anymore, and I actually can make a living wage, a full year's salary in the WNBA? Maybe that's where I should go, just like we've seen in college football and men's college basketball.
Yeah, it's definitely a draw, and it makes that decision, or makes a decision you might not have thought about making a couple years ago, thinking about it a little bit more. So yeah, I agree. FGCU is ending up where we thought they would be. They're looking like that team. They're falling into form. Also, I guess we look at a team who we thought were going to be falling into form with FGCU. We've got a team that probably at some point in time, many people might have been surprised. I'm all in on the Bellarmine women's basketball bandwagon. They have arguably I think we mentioned on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. You may say they lost their best player with Gracie Merkel going to Penn State, but
they also didn't have her all of last year.
Right. That's a good point. Like, she's been gone maybe 2 years that she hasn't been there. And the way this team is playing right now, sitting at 8-2, I think Bellarmine, again, we're talking non-conference. We know how it is. Once we get to conference play, things can change a little bit. But what have you seen from this Bellarmine team?
Yeah, for me, it's really exciting, William, because I got to call Bellarmine UNF last year, and in talking with Chancellor Dugans, the head coach, it had to be a reworked offense on the fly because Gracie was ruled out, third week of the season, second week of the season, whatever it was for early, the year. It was a matter of, our identity was feed the post, play inside out, and now all of a sudden I have all these shooters. I don't have a ton of height in the front court. And what do we do now? And so that's why it's really what you are seeing right now, the fruits of the labor of last year and the growing pains that team experienced, not having that true back to the basket center a season ago. And look, I mean, there's a reason that Haley Harrison is among the top scorers in the ASUN right now. It's because she had so much opportunity a season ago where perhaps coming into the year, she was looked at as the third or fourth option. And now she's the primary option. And she's already had starts under her belt, and she's been exposed to playing against great competition. That makes this year finally where I think Bellarmine thought they would have been a year ago in a different offensive system.
Yep. I think Bellarmine is. I think they're ready. I think I'm really excited to see what they do. We've also got EKU who is on a great run. I think they've got 5 in a row that they've won. Greg Todd, amazing coach with that transition of losing Antoinette Walker, a player of that level, but still, I mean,
walking bucket. By the way, we got to call a game of hers up here in Jacksonville as well, and man, oh man, I mean, talk about a player who I'm excited to see at the next level because she's a true wing,
right?
And she can also play the 5 if you want to go small as well.
So I think that EKU is kind of staying consistent with where we thought they would be. I want to ask you, are you at all surprised with what Jacksonville has been able to put on the court this year with Special James in their second season?
I'm going to pull up a stat for you, William. And for me, I don't want to speak out of turn for one Special Jennings, who I think has done an incredible job in not just building that roster. The recruiting is off the charts here in Duval County. for the Finns, but also the identity part of it. She is an intense person to begin with, and her team plays gritty, intense, fierce. The biggest stat for me is that this is a JU team that was the cellar dweller when it came to defense last season. They gave up 70.6 points per game. That number, it's through 9 games, but that number is down to 62.9. You ultimately came into the season knowing you had Eden Battle, knowing you had someone who presumably would be leading the ASUN in scoring like she is at this juncture.
Right.
So offense was not going to be the issue.
Exactly.
It was a matter of if this team could also get it done defensively. And so that's why when I look at the results from when they went down to South Florida, hanging with Miami, losing a 1-possession game, the big win over FIU, it's not surprising to me to see them score more than 70 points in a game. What is surprising is that they're also getting it done on the defensive end of the floor right now. But then when you consider they have Sanaya Craig, the league's leading rebounder, who was so poised to take another step. And I know it's because of the inside exposure tournament that's here in Jacksonville. I still don't know how special lured her from Arizona to come all the way to Jacksonville. It's a beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
So is Arizona. So a diamond in the rough, and what a find for Special Jennings and her staff. And obviously the returns are there. And you couple that with another second-year player in Sanaya Garrett, their point guard, the fact that allows Eden Battle to play off the ball, it's a very exciting prospect of what the Finns have brewing on the north side.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about Jacksonville and the city of Jacksonville, let's touch on North Florida women's basketball. It's been a challenging year. Again, Erica Lambert's in her second season. What do you think North Florida has to do to kind of get it rolling and get it going? I think that team is – you look at that team and you see, they should be winning some of these games that they're in, and then they just – the record's not there, the wins are not coming. What do you think can put them over take the next step?
Well, here's the reality of it is that this is a team that right now its front court depth has been tested. I think the graduation of Emma Browerman was one of the more underrated storylines in the entire conference going into this season. They really have not addressed that graduation. You couple that with trying to have Kayla Rougier, who traditionally is a shooting guard, she's off the ball, her also having to assume the role as a point guard. And she's done a great job, and she's provided veteran leadership for Erica's squad. But ultimately, that's a lot on Rouge. And it's not that she can't handle it, but you also arguably don't have your top 2 shooters right now. Alexa Washington lost for the season with the torn ACL suffered in August. Maddie Millar, who I've gotten to know very well. I covered her entire high school career here in the River City at Bishop Kenny. Shout out to the BK Lounge. And not having Maddie right now until potentially January, and that is after a 3rd knee surgery, that adds to the load that Kayla Rougier has to carry. I called the Ospreys game a few weeks ago. I was really encouraged by some of the contributions they're getting from some of those younger players. I think that's going to be critical down the stretch. I think Jamison Stinson, when she's on, she is on from 3-point range. And you saw that when they went down to UCF and she hit 4 threes. She's somebody who really needs to step up to the plate. Jazz Spencer had arguably the quietest 20-point game I've ever seen in my life a few weeks ago in UNF's loss to Coppin State. And she's another one who is a transfer into UNF. She's a senior. Need to see that production out of her in order to, again, ease the load off of Kayla Rougier. And the one name that I will throw at you to finish on the Ospreys is Jazz Gibson. Jazz Gibson is a true freshman, was a McDonald's All-American candidate. And what's crazy is she's 6'1", and she's just growing into her frame right now. She looks like a gazelle. She looks like a baby deer out there. And that's, if you're an Ospreys fan, you should be extremely encouraged with the early returns. Had her first double-double of her career against Samford, or first 20-point game, I should say, not a double-double. Don't quote me on that. It was her first 20-point game, but that's a massive step forward. And the fact that she's a freshman, the fact that Stinson's a freshman, Nicole Carino, who they pulled out of Riverview, she dropped double figures in that win over Samford. She's a true freshman as well, and a non-traditional three-point shooter. You would look at her at 5'10" and you would say, oh, she's probably a post player. No, she could step out from the arc and she could shoot the 3 too. So it's an exciting young nucleus, but ultimately you're going to need that young nucleus to grow up rather quickly because you don't have those top 2 shooters and because you don't have the front court presence that you did a season ago. Yeah,
definitely want to see what that team can grow into. And growing up can happen quick. I mean, you
Jazz, I mean, look, Jazz Gibson's the prime example. I mean, Erica and her staff said, like, from game one to now, like, I mean, it has had to be like, all right, you got to be playing as a sophomore by the time we start ASUN play.
Right.
And early returns from what I saw, look, again, there's going to be growing pains, but she's an impressive player and one to keep your eye on as we get ready for conference play.
Let's stick with UNF, but let's pivot.
All right.
Let's talk about
the other birds of Trey. They're both birds of Trey now, which is a big part, I think, of the identity piece when it comes to Erica Lambert's squad. Is she wants to shoot the three. They want to shoot 23s a game. Yeah. They're not getting to that mark largely just because of some of the deficiencies elsewhere. Matthew Driscoll's squad, though, they're right on target with where I think they want to be, outside of maybe some losses that they probably want those games back.
Yeah, the Asheville, the UNC Asheville. I think, and they're getting a chance. They've got UNC Asheville coming up Tuesday. You get a chance to get a little revenge with that. But just being someone here in this community, what was that start? That buzz around that start that UNF had on the men's side.
It was exciting, especially mired in yet another mediocre Jaguars season. But I think that, and look, I want that momentum to continue. I heard from so many people who, because they heard that UNF was able to slay the dragon, go out, slay the giant that is South Carolina, featuring the reigning SEC Coach of the Year in Lamont Paris. I know it's a reworked roster from last year. That's a massive victory up in South Carolina to turn that around, pick up an easy dub per se at home, and then also go on the road and beat Georgia Tech in the span of 1 week. I heard from people all over the country in basketball circles saying, I mean, personally, I put them in my AP poll, and I heard the argument of, why are you putting a team that's 150th in KenPom? But Matt Norlander of CBS Sports made the point. They went from 300 something in KenPom to 150th. It's one of the largest 1 week jumps that we've seen in college basketball history, and it's a credit to Matthew Driscoll and his staff's goal of staying the process, staying true to their identity, reworking this roster in the NIL age. Look, people forget the players that they've lost in the transfer portal, largely just by nature to the world we live in.
Right.
Chaz Lanier is the headliner, I understand, but Jose Placer leaving for USF to play for the late Amir Abdur-Rahim last year. Jalen Hicklin leaving for Oklahoma State a few years ago. Those are guys that in a different world, or Jarius Hicklin, excuse me, in a different world, they would have stayed at UNF their entire career.
Right.
Those guys are playing at the Power 4 Group of 5 level, and they're starting.
Yes.
So that's where I think there was a lot of criticism of, UNF can't keep those guys. So they've had to rework and reframe the focus from a recruiting standpoint of, we will accept that guy may leave in his senior year or junior year. We would love for him to stay all 4 years, but we've accepted that. But let's try to bring those pieces together right now and see what we can do. And in turn, because those Power 4 schools are mining the transfer portal and maybe not paying attention to that fringe 4-star who's hanging out in Orlando and is still waiting for somebody in the Power 4 to offer him, let's go out, let's offer that guy and say, we understand you may leave, but you will leave after you ball out for us first. And I think you're seeing that right now, and not that we wish any of those players to transfer, but it's exciting. And people in Jacksonville have said that they've either bought season tickets, they want to go hang out in the suite, they want to sit courtside. The price is affordable. It's a great product that Nick Morrow and his staff at UNF are putting on. That's not just because they pay me to. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. And yeah, so it's been great to see, and now it'll just be a matter of, can they carry that into ASUN play, which has been the bugaboo the last few seasons.
Yep. Another program that's doing something, I think, as exciting and transitioning and taking it back to that week in that AP poll, receiving votes. Austin Peay was right there with UNF. Corey Gibson and that Governor's team, the win against Butler. I know the last few weeks for Austin Peay have been challenging. They've got some losses here and there, but, I mean, this is a team that he came in year one, took them to the championship final. A couple shots bounce a different way. You know, they're talking about they go into DeLand and beat Stetson and come out, and they're defending champions this year. So runner-up last year, great start to the season. Austin Peay, where do you see them?
I think, just like I said about Special Jennings on the women's side at JU, I got a chance to call Corey Gibson when they came to Jacksonville to play JU last year. I got a chance to call that game. And in meeting with him and his staff during pregame shoot-around, identity.
Yeah.
Identity. It may not be for everybody, but that tough-nosed, we are focused on defense. I don't care how many points they score. I don't care what they're doing. I am solely focused on us and our product. I don't think that was simply a first-year coach in the short-term focus of, I want to be invested in our product.
Right.
I truly believe that's how Corey operates.
Yeah, 100%.
He is, I mean, and we won't even get into, the controversy about his attire at games. He has approval from a military member.
Yeah.
I salute Corey. I salute the military. Point being that you should be paying attention to this team, not just because of the antics on the sideline. Although the antics are great, because I do think, just like we, I guess now we don't currently praise Dan Hurley, but we praise Dan Hurley for enthusiasm. Corey has that enthusiasm.
Yes.
It's unwavering faith in what this team's been able to do. And on the defensive end of the floor, I'm not sure there's a better outfit right now in the ASUN.
Yeah. Austin P is definitely, I think, as we've talked, and I believe they're in that group of, and it's early, we get it. We're just a month and some change over starting the season, but Austin B coming into the year, definitely thought they could bounce back and be back in the championship final, have a deep run in the postseason. Another team that's preseason number one, and right now they're looking like that preseason number one pick, Lipscomb.
Mm-hmm.
They've got J.O., who is scoring a lot of points. I think Lipscomb is Lenny Acuff obviously has built that program. They're in position. They're kind of always in the mix. I think over the last few years, you had your Liberties, you had your Kennesaw State the last few years, teams that are no longer here. But Lipscomb is always in that mix. They're a semifinal team, or they're making a run to the final or the championship. What have you seen from Lipscomb so far this season?
Yeah, I think that what you're seeing from Lipscomb is consistency. You just alluded to it, that UNC Asheville loss may sting UNF when push comes to shove, either on Selection Sunday or somewhere down the line. Lipscomb is taking care of business where they need to. I understand they got blown out by Arkansas. At the time was ranked in the AP Top 25. They got blown out by Kentucky. Guess what? Kentucky is currently the 5th team in the country. That's not so shabby of a loss when you look back on it.
Right.
Their other 2 losses, a 1-point loss to Belmont, a 5-point loss to Western Kentucky. Two possession losses in those 2 losses to comparable mid-majors, even maybe higher mid-majors with those 2 programs. They're on a 4-game win streak right now. They take care of Jackson State, Alabama A&M, Chattanooga, Southeast Missouri State. I know that those programs are not necessarily at the level of Belmont, but they're at the level, but at the same time, they're mid-majors that you should be winning those games.
Exactly.
And you couple the Belmont and the Western Kentucky loss with the fact that they go on the road and they knock off Duquesne. Duquesne, a lot of people were talking about them during the month of March this past year, were they not? And Wofford, who I understand Mike Young's time there has long since passed, but that's still a program that is constantly in the conversation among best mid-majors. And so the fact that they went on the road, they took care of business up in Western Pennsylvania, they took care of Wofford. I almost wiped that Belmont, Western Kentucky losses. I almost wiped them off the board and say, hey, they were competitive in those games, one possession, 2 possession loss, and they're taking care of business where they need to. And that's that consistency that you need to see as you get ready for conference play.
Yep. So super early, as we just stated, if we had to just have you pick before any conference games, we've just got non-conference. We've got nothing real to compare it with, but let's just have a little fun.
Yeah.
Who would be your women's pick right now if you had to pick it?
I mean, it's Florida Gulf Coast until it's not, right? Like,
I'm with you.
I mean, I can't go against history. I understand Carl's not at the helm anymore, but again, the product is the same. It's the same players. It's the same philosophy. And I don't know who else could really push them. Like, yes, Bellarmine is putting it together. Eastern Kentucky is putting it together, but
I need to see it.
And it's honestly, I don't want to call it easy money to pick Florida Gulf Coast or safe money, but
it's pretty safe. I'll say it.
When you've won the conference and the conference tournament for 10 plus straight years, like, I mean, come on now. You're not going to go against history.
Right. Okay. We don't have that on the men's side. So
No, and that brings up an important storyline, William, that I said to you I definitely wanted to hit on, which is I think locally here in Jacksonville, I don't think, because ASUN play hasn't started yet, I don't think people realize that Kennesaw State and Liberty are gone, that they are off to the Conference USA. and what that means for the two programs here in the River City. The door is open, in my opinion. And so that's where that same consistency we were just talking about from Lipscomb, I need to see that from UNF. Not just, hey, you go on the road, you win 3 straight to open the year, including 2 over Power 4s, but then you turn it around and you have some disappointing losses to Georgia Southern and UNC Asheville. Those are the games that Lipscomb's taking care of right now.
Yeah.
And while Matthew Driscoll has a younger squad here in Jacksonville compared to Lipscomb, compared to a couple other programs in the ASUN right now, he'd be the first to tell you that's no excuse, because he's also got a lot of returners who have played a lot of games for him. And so they need, and if not for him, they've played games in college basketball. Josh Harris, yes, maybe the freshman sensation, may end up winning ASUN Freshman of the Year, but they're going to need those veteran pieces to step up if UNF is to contend. And I guess I'll pick Lipscomb just because, like I said, I feel like they, of any team in the ASUN on the men's side right now, are taking care of business where you need to take care of business. But I would like to shout out West Georgia. I've been impressed on both the men's and the women's side.
Yes.
First Division I men's win in their program's history earlier this week.
Yes.
And among the leading scorers in the conference in their first year on both the men's and the women's side. To see a couple West Georgia names pop off, that's encouraging to see, knowing you lost 2 powerhouses in Kennesaw State and Liberty.
I've definitely been mentioning that West Georgia, especially the men, the women have been winning for a couple weeks, but the men, I don't necessarily know if anybody wants to see that team in January.
No.
Yeah, just based on how.
Well, they don't want to see Shelton Williams Dryden. I'll tell you that much.
He's the one.
They do not want to see that guy. He's a walking bucket. He's averaging 17.7 points per game. That's good for 3rd in the league.
Yeah.
You don't want to see them right now. I mean, yes, you argue, you try to shut him down, but I mean, that's a team that may be playing with a little more confidence than they were at the early onset.
Exactly, and I think you hit on a great point with that door being wide open on the men's side. I mean, if you look, it's somebody's time. I mean, 2 years ago, Kennesaw State won their first ASUN championship. Last year, Stetson got their first. It's here. It's here for the taking.
It's wide open, and that's what I think is very exciting for any of these teams in the field.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, let's do it. Absolutely. And whenever, you guys want to talk men's or women's basketball, I'll pop on down the road.
Sounds like a plan. Well, appreciate it. We'll be right back.
From the bluegrass of Kentucky, the Arkansas River, to the beautiful beaches of Florida. From the bustling streets of Nashville to the soulful sounds of Muscle Shoals and its vibrant cities. Fueled by growth, the Atlantic Sun operates in the fastest growing region in America and broadcasting in over 20 million homes. We're everywhere you want to be, with access to 9 of the nation's top 80 media markets, including an impressive 6 in the top 50. Our 12-member institutions provide every collegiate experience, from public to private to faith-based. All of our member institutions are located in the top 30 states with the most rapid growth, including 8 members located in the top 6. From the beaches to the mountains, the Atlantic Sun is the destination.
We are back, and it's time to dive into the power rankings. I think I'm going to start this week with the one I think that'll get the less, be the less controversial of the two. Less of a conversation starter. I'll go with the women. I could be wrong, though, but.
You're going to be wrong.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Let's see. Number 6, I've got West Georgia. A win doesn't drop you out of my power rankings. I mean, a loss doesn't drop you out of my power rankings. But a win can get you in. Central Arkansas is number 5. Got Jacksonville at 4. I've already said that 3-game winning streak. I like what they're doing. Number 3, Bellarmine with their 5-game winning streak. EKU with their 5-game winning streak is number 2. The 7-game winning streak wins it out for me. FGCU is number 1. That's what I got. That's where I'm standing.
I think Bellarmine should be number 1. Here's what I have.
This is interesting to me because I for a while I had Bellarmine at 1, and you told me FGCU needed to be there. Now
I'm
FGCU's 2 weeks in at number 1, and it's like, oh, we're tired of them. We get them out of there.
I know I wasn't a hater, but I disagreed with you.
FGCU fatigue just happened so quickly.
It's just I think like when we think about like power rankings, it's more like to me who's winning right now and who gets the better wins. So I just don't think FGCU's wins against New College of Florida and Ave Maria are quite as good as the Morehead State win that Bellarmine picked up this week. Haley Harrison, Maya Brown, 16 points, both in that game. They had 4 shooters with 10-plus points. If we had an award at the end of the season that said, hey, who is the player that was most surprising to you? And I don't know if that's the right way to say it, surprising, but Maya Brown has just been a very pleasant surprise to me as being one of the best players in conference. So, shout out Bellarmine. I think they deserve that spot. I don't want to trounce FGCU, but I will a little bit. Just kidding. To me, those were tune-up games. Amani Jefferson and Dolly Cairns combined for 22 points in both of those games. Mm-hmm. So it's 2 games. Your top players are playing 22 minutes combined. And in addition to that, they beat Ave Maria. They scored 100 points on them. They got 30 more points, 29, I think, technically, last year. Granted, Uju and Briley both played those games for FGCU last year. 2 of their better players. This was more of a bench show, getting everyone tuned up for conference play for the rest of non-conference. Give it to Bellarmine, please.
The only thing I will say, and that is fair point.
But 7 wins is great. Like
7 wins is great, and Bellarmine had 7 wins going into that game. I think a 7-2 Bellarmine team should beat, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about Jacksonville. I've gotten to the point, and maybe the FGCU fatigue is a thing. Maybe the Bellarmine just, this is just normal. Maybe I overlooked that because 4-4 Morehead State, 2-1 at home, 7-2 Bellarmine at the time. They should beat them. Like, they should. So they did. Now comparing that, FGCU, New College of Florida, Ave Maria, they should win that. They should win it handily, like as they did last year.
Right.
So I get your point. It's a fair point.
I like your point, though, too. You are, like, the way you do it is thinking, like, you keep building wins. Like, why would you go down? I typically agree with that. But I just wanted to – I just felt like Bellarmine.
I can get behind the fact that the 2 wins are not, like, great wins. They're not D1 wins. And you did them at home. I get that. And Bellarmine went on the road. That's fair. It's not a bad argument. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Let's go to the men's.
On the men's side, I think it's a little less. Again, I thought this would be the one that would get more questions. I thought this was a little more of like, oh, he may have some questions about this one. Let's see. Queens at 6. Got Jacksonville at 5. EKU at 4. FGCU is 3. North Alabama is 2. Lipscomb is 1. Again, it's power rankings. It's what we're doing now. I know I said North Florida was, if I had to pick a handful of teams, I did say North Florida would be up there. That's a body of work thing that I'm talking about. Like right now, they went 1-1 on the week. They won the non-D1. I mean, they won they won the non-D1. They did lose the Division I game that they had. It's a great game, but North Florida is out of the power rankings at the moment.
That is shocking. I'd have him in there.
You would?
Yeah.
Where?
5 or 6 probably.
5
Please tell me you got Queens somewhere in there.
Queens was 6.
Yeah. Shout out Queens. They won both of their SoCon ASUN Challenge games.
Yeah.
They deserve some credit for that.
They do.
And I'm glad they're in the top 6. UNF is
better than Jacksonville right now? Right now today. not year. That was where my comment earlier came from, the body of work. I put them up there with Lipscomb and the UNA at the moment. Their record is their record. Like they're not, they have not had a bad season. I'm just saying, like right now.
I know this is tough for me because I've been riding with Jacksonville all year. I actually probably would put UNF currently next to Jacksonville. It'll be interesting once we hit conference play how good this UNF team is, just because I think teams know how to play them, and this is, to me, a very, very Driscoll-style team. So, to me, it's like once you hit conference season, it's like just throw the record books out. It's like it's a whole new season. So, I just think their body of work in non-conference is worthy of being in the top 6, more than Jacksonville's is.
Now you're saying the body of work is better.
Yeah.
From UNF. Yeah. I think so because of the highs.
But I can't really be saying this and then say what I said in the last power.
Well, yeah, and I just have a question.
Being hypocritical.
Because, Jacksonville has 4 losses on the year. They've lost to Florida. They've lost to Georgia. They share that in common with UNF. They have the Mercer loss that I think they probably should have won that game.
Yeah.
And they've lost to Furman. That was a bad one.
Game.
That's the bad one. I'd say UNF has the bad one too. So I think the one that kind of separates them, again, it separates them record-wise as well. It's probably that Mercer game. I think we're looking at them a little bit closer if Jacksonville gets it done, doesn't go to overtime, losing overtime to Mercer. Because then I think it's a little bit closer of a conversation. For body of work purposes. Because then we're talking about a 6-3 Jacksonville, 6-4 UNF. You know, they're 5-4 and they're 6-4. It's not a huge gap there, but like right now in this week, I will give the edge to Jacksonville slightly. Like, again, they have won after losing to Georgia.
Yeah,
Florida Tech. Not throwing a party over Florida Tech, but it is what it is. But those are the power rankings. The conversation is good.
Lipscomb, shout out Lipscomb. I think J.O. has been every bit as advertised. So, they're rolling.
Oh, yeah. So now it's our matchups. Let's look at our matchups to watch, what we got coming up. I've talked about Jacksonville women's basketball. I'm still there. Jacksonville's at Marshall on Friday. Playing away from home is when it's been tough for the Dolphins. But Marshall hasn't been outstanding on his home floor this year. I think it's a good opportunity for head coach Special Jennings and the Dolphins to get a road win. Queens at Western Carolina on Saturday. I want to see if the Royals can – no, they had a tough loss to Kentucky. Can they get back on track? They had strung together a handful of wins. They had their longest winning streak in their program's Division I history. Ran up against Kentucky. Can they get it back going? And then, talking about Saturday on the women's side, we got 3 games. All 3 of them are Power 4 matchups. Not Saturday. This is on Sunday. We got Bellarmine at Indiana. We got Lipscomb at Missouri. We got Austin Peay at Cal. And then the Knights do play Chattanooga before that game, but we're always excited to see our teams face off against those teams from those top conferences. I think that, look, this year has, as far as, the upsets, the big wins, the wins we didn't know we would get, we got a lot of them. I should be satisfied, but I'm not. I want more. I need, let me get one more. I need one more Power 4 win. It's like, we got everything we would need. Probably got a little bit more than we asked for. You go to the Chinese restaurant, you order, you get your plate, your fried rice or your noodles, whatever your preferred protein of choice. They load it up. It's like, I got a little bit more than I needed. And then you get to the end and they were like, hey, you want that spring roll? I don't need that spring roll.
But you want it.
But I want it. Yeah. I need another P4 win. I need that spring roll. That's what I'm looking for on the women's side. And On the men, jumping right back into the Dolphins, Jacksonville at home against ETSU on Saturday. The Dolphins haven't lost this year inside Swisher. These two teams have not played in 10 years since ETSU was part of the conference. This is also a game that's part of the ASUN SoCon Alliance, so we'd like to get this win. It's not a challenge.
I messed that up. I said challenge earlier. Hand up.
It's not a
I meant
challenge.
alliance.
It's a scheduling alliance. We want to win as many games in the scheduling alliance as we can. I think North Florida has an important pair of games on the non-conference slate as non-conference play is coming to a close. On Saturday, they get UNCG. It's another ASUN SoCon scheduling alliance game. But then on Tuesday, they have the rematch with UNC Asheville. Just talking about that game, I think that's one that they probably will want back from earlier in the season. I know they close out with the Gators in Gainesville on December 21st, but winning 2 out of those last 3 could go a long way to build back that momentum that UNF had early in the season coming into conference play. So I think these next 2 games for UNF are not must-win games, but I think to your point, that body of work, when you look at the whole non-conference for North Florida, closing out, again, get UNCG, get Asheville, get Florida too. I told you I want that spring roll, so I need another one. And our options, our window of opportunity is tightening up a little bit here. But I think those are just a handful of games on the women's and the men's side of games that I'm looking forward to this weekend. Obviously, we're rolling through this non-conference play, rolling through the month of December. It's almost that time for conference play. Not quite there yet. But now it's time, before we wrap things up, the mailbag. Patrick, what we got?
Yeah, we got a question from someone who does not want their name to be displayed or mentioned on this podcast.
Those are great.
Great. From Jacksonville. Totally understand. If the season were to end today, who would be the freshman of the year? To me, there's 2 answers, and I'll give you a little bit of color to this question. Josh Harris from UNF and Lane Taylor from Central Arkansas, to me, are the top 2 picks, per se, if I were to choose myself here. Lane Taylor is averaging 17 points per game, whereas Josh Harris is just 1 point below that, 16.1 points per game. Field goal percentage is quite different. Josh Harris leads the conference in field goal percentage with .648, while Lane is at 12 with .382.
Right now, today, between those 2, I would have to lean Harris. And I'm leaning Harris because there's not a huge gap in those numbers you gave. They're pretty close. In the scoring, the little bit more you get scoring from Taylor right now, I don't think outweigh what you get from a rebounding perspective with Harris for UNF. Just 7.2 rebounds per game.
Yep. 3.2, right, for Lane?
He's 5th in the conference.
Lane's towards the bottom of the conference, right? 3.2, I want to say.
4.8.
4.8, okay.
So,
by nature of his position, Lane Taylor being a point guard, he will not get as many as Josh Harris, who was probably a small forward, power forward, stretch forward, maybe.
Stretch. Yeah, I mean, you're right. But I think that for right now, because of that impact, and if those numbers were closer, Taylor's averaging 3.4 assists per game. So he's, 3 assists, 4 rebounds. He's got the scoring. Not a
shot at him. He's having a great year.
Yeah, I say that. It's like right now, Harris is where I would lean. I know you kind of gave me give me those two head-to-head. I'm going to lean Harris right now. A little bit of it, is it the success UNF has had? Does that play a part?
I think so. I think it does.
Yeah.
I think that, to me, that's what, beyond the rebounding, that would give me the edge, is that they've won the big games.
Yeah.
And Josh Harris has been an important part of those games.
And I don't have a vote in this. I could be completely off, but I feel at the end of the year, coaches may look to that a little bit too when you look to voting. The success of the team, where the team is. Now, you're not going to completely ignore astronomical numbers.
Yeah.
But if you've got a person who's averaging a couple more points, but you've got a person who's averaging 4 to 5 more rebounds, and this team is top 3 in the standings, and you've got a team who's had a more challenging year and is a little bit lower, we'll see. We'll see. But, I mean, that's a today. Today, I would go Harris. I think that's going to be a great race to keep watching. We always seem to have a great freshman of the year battle going on in this conference when we come down. It usually comes down to 2 because of just the nature of our conference and how it works out. But you may have laid out the 2 that we were looking at here in late February, early March, and we're like, okay, which one gets it? And they're
neck and neck.
They're neck and neck, and that margin of what the difference is something we're, are you splitting hairs? Maybe, But right now, I would go Harris.
I think what's interesting, too, is Harris has kind of been a surprise this season. Coach Schulman at Central Arkansas has talked to us outside of the podcast, and I believe he also said this on the podcast, that he wants to play freshmen this year because he wants to build experience so that when they are in contention to start winning a lot of games, he has the experience on his team.
Yeah, they're ready.
So, shout out Coach Schulman and Lane Taylor, because he's definitely been excellent this year. As an excellent recruit.
Yep.
But Josh Harris has been a huge surprise and is a huge part of those big wins. I would agree with you.
Yeah. Love to talk about it. Stuff early. Your little freshman of the year conversation going on here in early December. Look, we got a lot of the season obviously left to go. Had a great start to it. We're excited about getting through this month of December, getting the conference play. But we'll just take it one week at a time, and we'll see you next week on the ASUN Game Day podcast.